The devil defended my grandmother from her abuser. Before I begin, even if you believe these stories or don't believe these stories, because obviously I cannot confirm these are true because I wasn't there, I do want to give you a trigger warning. This does talk about domestic violence. So if you're sensitive to topics like this, please just scroll away. So this story was told to a girl by her grandmother. This happened to her grandmother when she was very young. At the time, she was pregnant and had already had 2 kids with a guy she had married. This guy was horrible. He was a drunk and he would beat her and even sometimes grape her. Obviously, she says that her grandmother now knows that she should have left him a very long time ago, but it was around those times where you get sent off to get married and basically you're supposed to stand by your man no matter what. And even if she tried to leave him, she at the time was fearful that the people in the town would just look down on her and take his side, so she was very afraid. So there was a night where her husband got to the house and again was drunk just like any other fucking day. They lived in a ranch a little far away from town, and before this man even stepped foot into the house, he was already screaming and insulting the lady. When he finally steps foot into the house, he punches the grandmother and accuses her of having an affair with somebody else and tells her that when he's gone, she probably hides them in the ranch somewhere. The grandmother claims that she never had an affair with anybody, but to her, he would just find any excuse to basically beat her up and treat her bad. But on that occasion, the grandmother did defend herself and tell him that he's crazy, that she's not having an affair, and that she's not hiding anybody in the ranch. However, that was when he started beating her up again and telling her that she was a liar, because when he started walking up to the house, he saw a man hiding like around the ranch. And as a matter of fact, he had seen the man, grabbed a machete, went towards where he saw him, but when he got there was nobody, and that's when he went back to the house and started screaming and insulting her and eventually beating her up. He continued to beat on her, and that's when the grandmother heard one of the doors of the house open up and footsteps coming near to where they were. That is when she looked up and being on the ground and sees a very, very dark shadow with really bright red eyes. She doesn't know how to explain it, but when she looked at this thing's eyes, she could tell that there's so much anger in them. When the shadow finally got really close to where they were, she said that she saw when the shadow grabs her husband and drags him out of the house. She stayed in shock, but says that she could still hear her husband screaming almost towards like the crops, like he was being dragged through the crops. In that moment, she got up, she went out of the house, and I mean, she was still like, what the fuck is going on? Because this shadow has taken her husband. She said from afar, she can still see where that shadow and her husband were moving, and they were moving away from the farm. And she doesn't understand why she didn't just turn around and go into the house, but she decided to follow. She decided that she was gonna go and save her husband. Couldn't be me, but let's keep going with the story. So she decided to follow, and as she followed, she noticed that they stopped when the land met the river. And as she got closer, she could see that this shadow with the red eyes was drowning her man in the river. I know they say don't ever wish anything bad on people, but she was terrified that her husband was gonna die, and she got close to where they were, and that is when the figure saw her and actually backed away from the man. She actually pulled her husband out of the water and says that he looked terrified. I still don't feel bad. She said that she didn't know how she did it, but she managed to get him up and try to walk him back towards the house. As they're walking towards the house, her husband finally comes to, and he doesn't know what's going on. He's pissed off and starts screaming and insulting the grandmother again. You want to know what's going on, bitch? She just saved your fucking life. But that's when the grandmother says that the shadow with those red eyes appeared again. She says that this figure grabs her husband again, but this time drags him far away towards the crops. However, this time, since the grandmother was so scared because she still didn't understand what she was seeing or what this thing was, she decided to go back to the house. And she says that even when she went into the house, she can hear her husband screaming. But even with those screams, she decided that she was not gonna come out of the house again, because this time she was like, what am I doing? I'm pregnant. I am not gonna go out there and save him from whatever that thing was. By this point, several days have passed and her husband had not come back home. She was starting to think the worst, but about 3 days later, he came back home. She explains that when she saw him, she almost did not recognize him. He had scratch marks from head to toe. His entire body was full of injuries. He was dirty and his clothes had just been torn. She says that the strangest thing about it was that her husband couldn't remember anything. He had no idea what happened to him. He didn't even remember where he had been the entire 3 days. Thankfully, the grandmother just opened her eyes and decided that she was gonna gonna leave his ass. When she decided to leave, she says that she never heard about him again. And with time, the grandmother met the girl who's telling us the story's grandfather. Thankfully, he was the complete opposite of what her ex-husband was. The grandmother says that she will never understand why that dark figure helped her that time. But because of what this thing looked like and his red eyes and the way she felt when she looked into his thing's eyes, she believes that it was the devil. Can you imagine how bad of a person you have to be that the devil defended somebody from you? Anyway, if you're watching this and you're a piece of shit that does this type of things, yeah, be careful because the devil might come and get you. That was crazy, right? I shouldn't say this, but like, be scared, bitch. Okay, I need to chill, but what do you guys think?